section before we go on to everyone. People asked many, many wonderful questions on the cards. I'm going to try to pull them together in categories. But one question remains that how do GMOs figure into the control of the world agriculture system? I know that sounds like a paranoid phrase, but we know that a lot of our tax money goes to subsidize agribusiness that utilizes GMOs and utilizes all these subterfuges. The trade agreements that you referred to earlier increase the power and the control that these agribusiness companies and their handmaidens like Monsanto, or their directors like Monsanto, have over small local farmers, thus the food sovereignty movement all over the world. That is, it's very hard to compete with agribusiness if you're a small farmer. They get displaced off their land because they can't compete. They get drawn into the big cities in the global south. They can't find work there, so it starts this immigration process that disrupts culture, disrupts economy, and disrupts the ecology. So I'm wondering if you could sort of show us the thread of how the reality of GMOs works its way through that dynamic.
Well, I did, because when I talked about that it all goes back to the patenting of life forms, that then allows the buy-up of the seed companies. It's basically agriculture is seed, and that's the main input besides the agrochemical inputs. And you already had the agrochemical input side was already concentrated, because you only had a few companies selling pesticides and fertilizers and that. And so the seeds were the last source, and you get the patenting that then allowed the same transnational pesticide companies to buy up and control these seed companies. So that just helps with the consolidation of this technological view, because now you can design, you can design seeds to be used with your own company's proprietary chemicals, because you sell the chemical and you sell the seed. So you can start to develop seeds that will make your company more money rather than be better for a farmer or something like that. So this control fits in very, very well, and that's why there's fights, and there are fights globally. And the interesting thing to me is over the past 20 to 30 years is to see the increasing strength of the civil society. First it was NGOs, then it's turned also into rural people's movements. Via Campesina is very strong, but there's now gathering organizations. Via Campesina is basically peasant movements all over the world. But guess what? There's fisher folk and there's pastoralists, and there's now starting to be meetings of Via Campesina, meeting with global representatives from herders and the International Collective in Support of Fish Workers, so that the different sectors in the peasant level that have been and there's the landless labor. One problem with Via Campesina is they don't want to deal with the Dalit issue in India. But what you're seeing is all these organizations and indigenous peoples' organizations are having more and more impact. When we look at what happens at the global level, either with the biosafety protocol or there's been a global agreement on the way forward in agriculture. It's this international agricultural assessment for the role of science and technology in development. It's analogous to the International Panel on Climate Change. There's been one that's been done for agriculture. It was finished last year. It doesn't get any press, and the reason it doesn't is because the U.S. and the biotech and other companies walked away from it, because the NGOs and the civil society organizations were able to have an impact, and that document says the answer for agriculture is not technology, it's not genetic engineering, it's local sustainable systems, it's looking at gender issues, it's looking at the impediments to trade, it's all these things that we've been talking about. That's what needs to be implemented. All the governments have agreed on this, right? They were all part of this international process, just like on climate change. It's been done for agriculture. That's what needs to be implemented. So there's more and more, even though there's a lot to do, there actually has been, I think, progress made in the last 30 years in terms of agriculture. There's still a long way to go, and now the huge fight's going to be over a lot of the climate change. But there are people that are gearing up for those fights as well. And have to get involved and think, act locally and also think globally.